Hello, I'm Marsha Chan, and I'm here back with you to talk about conditionals. In the last video, I asked you to analyze the sentences in the article and determine whether they belong to the present if clause and present in the main clause, or the past if clause, modal in the main clause, or the past perfect if clause and the past modal in the main clause. So let's check your answers with mine. I'll show you on a grid. The first part shows the present tense in the if clause and the present tense in the main clause, also known as the independent clause, or IC. Here's the example from the article. If you see an object in the sky that isn't twinkling, that probably means it's a planet, not a star. All right, so here we have the present in both clauses, in the dependent conditional if clause and in the independent main clause. That's used for general truth situations. Now, let's look at the past tense in the if clause and the modal in the main clause. There are many different kinds of modals, and we have two examples here. If there were no moon, there would be no lunar tides. If the moon didn't exist, the Earth would be spinning much faster. All right, now, most of the time it is the simple past, as in did not exist. The past can be affirmative or negative, depending on the meaning. Here's an example, didn't exist. This one is a negative example. The only verb that doesn't look like the past is the verb be. So in the if clause, we use the word were. So actually, this is the subjunctive. Many European languages have a subjunctive form of the verb, which is very different from the present or the past. In English, the subjunctive form is identical in looks to the past tense for all verbs except be. The verb be is the only verb that sticks out as being something different. So the verb were is used. If I were, if you were, if he were, if she were, if it were, if there were. So here, if there were no moon. Okay, if there were no moon means, in fact, there is a moon, but we're just making a hypothetical condition. If there were no moon, but there is a moon, there would be no lunar tides. But in fact, there are lunar tides. There are present time, but there would be no lunar tides if this condition were true. But it is not true that there's no moon. If the moon didn't exist, but it does exist. In fact, it exists. If the moon didn't exist, the Earth would be spinning much faster than it is right now. It is not spinning, that's the present continuous. It isn't spinning so fast because there is a moon. But if the moon didn't exist, the Earth would be spinning much faster. You are asked to look for the past perfect in the if clause and a past modal in the main clause. And the article shows two examples. If XPR 209 had hit the Earth, it would have caused extensive damage. And if it had collided with our planet, we might have survived. All right, now, had hit and had collided look like the past perfect, right? But they are a form of past subjunctive. It just looks like a past perfect, so that's what we'll call it, since you don't want to learn any more terms than you need to. But what does it mean? In fact, the XPR209 did not, past tense, hit the Earth. But if it had hit, using a farther past perfect, to show a hypothetical situation. If it had hit the Earth, it would have caused extensive damage. It would have caused. Did it cause any damage? No. In fact, it, past tense, did not cause any extensive damage because it did not hit the Earth. But if it had hit the Earth, it would have caused extensive damage. Now, did it collide with our planet? No, it did not hit, it did not collide. If it had collided, this is a past conditional, using the past perfect to show the hypothetical situation. If it had collided with our planet, we might have survived anyway. It might not have been too terrible for people to have been wiped off of the face of the Earth. We might have survived. So perhaps we still would have survived.